Hello and welcome to the next edition of Learning with Luke. It is our 2-year journey through the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts. Today we're in the second half of chapter 8, and we have two healing stories. They're both quite different from each other, and they're more involved than a lot of the stories as well. This starts at verse 26 and goes all the way through verse 56. So it's 31 verses for two long stories. Lots of details, lots of interaction with crowds and the people who are seeking healing. So let us listen for the word of God. Then they arrived at the region of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. As he stepped out on shore, a man from the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had not worn any clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him, shouting, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the wilds. Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there on the hillside a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd stampeded down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When the swineherds saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came out to see what had happened, and when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they became frightened. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. Then the whole throng of people of the surrounding region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got in the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. Now when Jesus returned, the crowds welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. Just then there came a man named Jairus, a leader of the synagogue. He fell at Jesus' feet and began pleading with him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years old, and she was dying. As he went, the crowds pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from a flow of blood for 12 years. And though she had spent all she had on physicians, no one could cure her. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak, and immediately her flow of blood stopped. Then Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds are hemming you in and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I noticed that power had gone out from me." When the woman realized that she could not remain hidden, she came trembling, and falling down before him, she declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone came from the synagogue leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher any longer." When Jesus heard this, he replied, "Do not be afraid, only believe, and she will be saved." When he came to the house, he did not allow anyone to enter with him except Peter, John and James, and the child's father and mother. Everyone was weeping and grieving for her, but he said, "Do not cry, for she is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, he called out, "Child, get up." Her spirit returned, and she stood up at once. And he directed them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astounded, but he ordered them to tell no one what had happened. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Amen. So we have these two really long stories. Lots of the healings are just a couple verses long. Someone in distress meets Jesus. Sometimes there are enemies who are wondering if he will heal on the Sabbath or can forgive sins. And then the person's healed and we move on. But these stories are developed both leading up to the healing and then leading out of the healing. So we're going to spend a little time today looking at those. The first one is the story of the Gerasene demoniac. And you are either really blessed or really cursed, because this is a story I have studied more than almost any other in Scripture. Now, I studied it in Mark's Gospel, not in Luke, but the story is almost exactly the same. And there's a couple things that are important to note with this story. The first is where Jesus actually is. Jesus is on the east side of the Sea of Galilee in the region of the Gerasenes. Gerasa was a town some miles away from the shore of the Lake of Galilee. But what's really important about this is that Jesus is in Gentile territory. I think this is the first time in Luke's gospel that Jesus has wandered into Gentile territory. He is no longer in the somewhat friendly confines of Galilee or in Jerusalem or Bethlehem, but now he is in a part of the world where Jews are not the predominant religion, and there's not even a Jewish caretaker government in the region like Herod was in Judea. This would have been run by Roman governors. And the other thing that's interesting about Gerasa that we know from history is that it was an army garrison town. Remember, Palestine of Jesus' time is occupied by the Roman army. It is a colony or a vassal state of Rome. And Rome really controls anything that really matters, finances and commerce. It oversees laws and all of that. They do allow the local authorities to take care of local customs and religious festivals, but Rome is really in control. And Gerasa is one of the places where Roman power is concentrated. So Jesus isn't just going anywhere. He's going into the very heart of the enemy. And to make sure we understand how powerful the evil in this area is, Luke takes his time to describe who this man is. He doesn't wear any clothes and he lives amongst the tombs. Everything is wrong about that. And he is so wild, he is so out of control that his neighbors and family try to shackle him, but he is so powerful and the evil within him is so great that even those bonds can't hold him. And he goes running off naked into the wilderness, just howling. I mean, you can feel the absolute anguish and distress that this man is under. And it becomes, in a way, a representation of the entire population that has been invaded and has been infected by a legion. Not just a group of demons called legion, but by the Roman legion that is garrisoned in Gerasa. And so there's kind of almost a double entendre working here. What is your name, Jesus asked. Now that's a really important question. Think back to Exodus, when Moses sees the burning bush and says, well, tell me what your name is so I can go tell Pharaoh who sent me. But what Moses really wants is power over God, because if we have someone's name, we can have power over them. And of course, God does not give Moses a name. He says, my name is Yahweh, which is not a name. It's just a word that means I am. I am the one who exists. You can have no name for me, for I am greater than you are. But interestingly, when Jesus asked the demon for its name, the demon quickly fesses up. It's also interesting with this demon that there is this almost grace that Jesus shows the demon. First, the demons beg that they not order them to go back into the abyss, apparently some place of great chaos and great torment for the demons themselves. And then they beg that they might be able to enter the pigs. And Jesus grants that. Sort of an interesting little grace note in a story of this contest between great evil and great good, that even as Jesus overcomes that great evil, he still extends grace even to the demons. It's really a remarkable thing. And the demons leave the man, go into the pigs, and the pigs go like lemmings over the cliff, go trampling down the bank, and throw themselves into the Sea of Galilee and drown themselves. Now, for Jews, this is no great loss because pork is not kosher and you don't eat them. That's one of the reasons you can tell you're in Gentile territory. No Jew would be raising pigs because you can't eat them, and it would be a waste of time and energy. But in Gentile region, they eat pork, and so there's also just a little kind of humor that's inserted in this story as well. Not only did the pigs tell us that we're in Gentile region and not Jewish region, but it's not such a big loss to lose a whole herd of swine like it would sheep or goats if you're Jewish. And there's these swineherds, and they see what happened, and they go both into the country and the city and tell everybody what happened. Now, part of their motivation is their livelihood just ran into the Sea of Galilee and has drowned itself, and so they're not real happy. This is not a group who is relieved about this. I mean, they were minding their own business. They weren't afflicted with some legion of demons. Maybe they heard the man howling and would see him occasionally, but they had nothing to do with him. And now they've lost their livelihood. So they go into the towns and into the country and tell people, oh my gosh, you won't believe what just happened. And all the people come out to Jesus, and here is the man sitting at Jesus' feet, which is a position of learning. Remember that it's Mary who sits at Jesus' feet when Martha's doing all her chores. Sitting at one's feet is both a sign of respect, and it is also the position from which we learn. We'll often say, I learned at the feet of this person. And it's both a term of respect and of indicating that this is someone who really has something to teach us. And then Luke adds two more details. One is that he's clothed. This is someone who has just been running around naked with broken shackles hanging from him for years, living amongst tombs and out in the wild. And now he's not only clothed, but Luke tells us that he is in his right mind. And how interesting that the very next sentence is, and they became frightened. We expect that when they see this man, they're not going to be frightened, they're going to be overjoyed. Someone who has lived in such torment has now been set free. And if him, then what about them? So what is that? Where does that fear come from? I think it comes from a couple of places. One is this is power they've never encountered before. The only power they could muster was shackles and chains, and it could not hold this man. And Jesus, by his word, can bring him healing and wholeness. The other reason I think there's fear is we get used to dysfunctional and unhealthy systems. It can happen in families, it can happen in institutions like schools or governments or churches. And after a while, we don't even question it. And if something changes, it becomes upsetting. Even if life is going to be better, at least I knew the score before. And so moves to health don't always appease everybody, because if he is now healthy, I have to renegotiate who I am. And that can be a frightening thing. And it's interesting, just as the demons begged Jesus to send them into the pigs, these people begged Jesus to leave. Get out of Dodge. You are not wanted around here. And Jesus tends not to hang around where people don't want to listen to him, so it says he got in the boat and he returned. But before he did, the man with the demons begged, again, here's this word beg, that he might go with Jesus. Who wouldn't want to? Also, he's not sure if he's going to be the most popular guy in the region. I mean, he just is the cause of all these swineherds losing their flock or their herd of pigs. And also his family members and townspeople are afraid of what has happened. So he asks if he can go with Jesus, and Jesus says no. No, return to your home. Enjoy the relationships that have been denied you. Reconnect with those people who do love you. Develop that. That is so important. And then declare how much God has done for you. And the one who has been healed becomes the witness to the power of the healing. He does it. It's an amazing story. The second story is equally long, and this one involves a wealthy man who is the leader of a synagogue named Jairus, and he comes to Jesus desperate because his only child, a daughter, is sick to the point of death. And Jesus responds. The man says, you need to come. It may be a sign of respect. This man is the leader of a synagogue, and he holds a position of importance in the community. But also there's a child in need, and Jesus will not deny her. And so he sets off with this man to his house. And on the way, this older woman who has this flow of blood, this hemorrhage. Now, we may think that she, has a sore that is weeping. What Luke is talking about here is menstrual blood. In Judaism, as in a lot of ancient cultures, at least in ancient Judaism, menstruation was a time when women were considered ritually unclean and could not go to synagogue and had to take a special purification bath in order to attend again in the synagogue. If she's had this for 12 years, not only is she in physical distress, but she is in extreme spiritual distress as well, because she has been denied for 12 consistent years the ability to go and worship God. And so this is a woman who has more desperation than anyone we can imagine. She is quiet and within her own mind, but she is in as much distress as the Gerasene demoniac, because she is cut off from everything that grounds her and is meaningful to her. And she thinks to herself, if I just touch the hem of his garment, I mean, what faith this woman has. And she doesn't want to be a bother. Jesus is on a mission. Let him go. And so she reaches out and touches the hem of his garment. And she's healed. Her body is restored. And can you imagine the joy that she feels, because all of a sudden everything that was denied her is available to her again. And it's not somebody else who stops this parade and wonders who's interrupting Jesus. It's Jesus himself. And he stops. You've got to imagine this, all this crowd pressing in, and he says, who touched me? Who touched me? I know someone touched me. I felt power leave me. Isn't that interesting? That power that we receive from Jesus is not like some electricity from a third source. It's his very power. Remember that the next time you're praying for guidance, for hope, for healing, when Jesus responds to us, he responds with his very being, with the power that makes him Jesus. That's an astonishing thought just in and of itself. So Jesus says, who touched me? Who touched me? And the disciples are like, this is so stupid. How many people around here could have touched you? Maybe it's a child brushing by. Jesus is like, no, somebody with intention for healing touched me. And finally, the woman knows she has been found out, and she comes before Jesus. And she falls down at his feet. This is the third time someone's been at Jesus' feet. The Gerasene demoniac, the father of Jairus, and this woman. And she confesses. And she also says, I was healed immediately. And we expect Jesus to chastise her, perhaps to even punish her, for she has violated a couple of very important social strictures. One is impure people do not touch pure people. Two, women who are not related to a certain man do not touch them. He is her social better. She has no business doing that. She has violated all of these rules. And Jesus, who is on the way to heal the child of the leader of the synagogue, says to this woman, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." This is a story of two daughters, both in equal need of healing, one who was poor and bereft, one who was young and well-to-do, but also in tremendous need, and Jesus treats them both. There is no differentiation. The wealthy does not get treated first. It's not first man up or first woman up. There's a need, and Jesus responds. It's really, really astounding. And then we get a little wrinkle in the story. Someone comes up and says, "Don't waste your time. She's dead." And Jesus is like, no, we're going. Don't be afraid, only believe, and she will be saved. Can you imagine if we said that to ourselves every single day? Do not be afraid, only believe, and you will be saved. Damn. Do not be afraid. Gosh, how many times do I need to tell myself that? Only believe. I need to hear that every day. And you will be saved. Those are words that we can live on every single day. And then he gets to the house and he takes her in. Or he takes his small band in, Peter, James, and John, and the mother and father. And he says, "Don't cry. She's not dead. She's only sleeping." Now, in other parts of the New Testament, the word sleep is used for dead. So it's kind of, again, a little pun going on here. She's not dead. She's just dead. Doesn't matter for Jesus anyway, because we've already seen with the son of the widow of Nain that Jesus can bring the dead back to life. And just to make sure we sort of feel the contest of belief and disbelief, Luke tells us that everybody laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. "Oh, yeah, like you can do anything here." Apparently, word about the son of the widow of Nain hadn't quite gotten to the town where Jairus was leader of the synagogue. And Jesus takes her by the hand, and he says, "Child, get up." And her spirit returns. She gets up, and then he says, "Give her something to eat," which seems like a little throwaway detail, but eating is so important to being connected to Jesus. One, it reminds us that he really is human, that he knows what it's like to be hungry, that he knows what it's like to fear for the life of a friend, that he knows what it's like to fear for our own life. He was human. And that's what he invites them to do for her, is to bring her back into the community, to help her be alive again. And the people were astounded. The parents were astounded, and he told them to tell no one. But somebody told, because the story got out. So those are our stories for this week. Two really, really profound healing stories. And they remind us that there is no one outside of Jesus' care, that he has time and power for everyone and for each of us. Thanks be to God.